Could this be the start of the greatest Star Trek action figure line ever? Today, we're reviewing the first wave of Nacelle Toys 1/10 scale Star Trek action figures, which have recently arrived in Australia via Popcultcha. Now, I'm old enough to have gone through a couple of Star Trek action figure lines. I saw the end of the Playmates figures, which had a very successful run from the 90s to the early 2000s. Art Asylum and Diamond Select took up the mantle after that, followed by Amigo revival, and then a rather dismal Playmates revival that looked like it had put the final nail in the coffin of Star Trek figures for good. Then came the Nacelle company, who in 2024 announced that they would be releasing a new line of action figures focusing on characters never before available. And boy, did they deliver on that particular promise. Figure 001 of this new line is Captain Edward Jellico from the Next Generation two-parter Chain of Command. The packaging is extremely collector friendly, with a large window display where you can see the full figure and accessories in all their glory. The packaging itself is highly glossy, featuring CG versions of the figures and a short bio. It also displays the logo of each series at the bottom. Opening the box, the figure is securely held in place in the plastic tray, and here he is, complete with Picard's fish tank? Yes, Jellico had a vendetta against the Ready Room fish, so what could be more appropriate than being packaged with it? Inside the acrylic bubble is a fairly detailed aquarium complete with Livingston the lionfish. I don't quite remember the walls being quite so pink, but it was the bum end of the 80s. Jellico himself is nicely realised. The face sculpt definitely looks like Ronnie Cox, but the thing that throws me off is the hair. It's a bit too white, and at the back there is a black line where it looks like the paint application wasn't completed. His uniform is nicely sculpted, with fabric folds and creases. The placement of his comm badge does seem a little bit too far right of centre to me, however. Also included are some Jellico specific accessories, including a set of 3 masterpieces from his son. There is also a brown book titled Cardassians, Customs and Etiquette, based on the one he carries in the episode, I guess. I don't believe we see the cover of it, and it's been a bit pedestrianly printed on the front here. He also comes with a pad. I'm not sure if the graphic is episode specific, but the design is a bit strange. It's also white rather than the dove grey seen in the show, and it must be a mistake because the back graphic, which is very detailed, is the right colour and matches the one that comes with Rachel Garrett in the next set. It also seems to have extra LCARS buttons printed off the keypad, and the graphic itself looks like it didn't fit properly into the molded screen recess. Seems like it might be a bit of a manufacturing issue. Add to that a Type 2 Cobra phaser, which I'm not sure Jellico actually picks up in the episode, and the muzzle has only been half painted black. He also comes with more hands than you can shake a stick at, 8 in total, ready for getting into a fist fight or holding all the accessories in either hand. I've got to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of these. I remember back in the old Art Asylum days having to find somewhere to store them all and keep them safe. There's plenty of articulation in this figure. The head is on a ball joint and rotates all around, the arms rotate around and out while the biceps, elbows and wrists all move, the waist articulates, the legs fan out, the thighs rotate, the knees bend, and the ankles are also on ball joints to help him stand. It's a bit difficult to remove the hands on this one compared to the others for some reason, but otherwise he is extremely poseable. And for a 2-episode appearance in TNG, Jellico has finally been immortalized in plastic. Up next, figure 002, Captain Rachel Garrett of the Enterprise C, as seen in the Next Generation story, Yesterday's Enterprise. And oh dear, she can't seem to stand up. Not sure what's going on here. Never mind. There's a really great likeness here, with that obscure Lost Era uniform in striking red but missing the undershirt and the belt. She comes with a frankly nightmare-inducing second head with a piece of shrapnel sticking out of her forehead. The sculpt on these figures appears quite soft, but I think it's due to the thick paint applications which tend to make the features appear a little too smooth. Garrett also comes with 8 swappable hands, as well as a Cobra phaser, a nicely painted pad, although I'm not too sure about the graphic. I think it may have come from Discovery rather than the TNG episode. An early TOS movie phaser, with a handle that I think is a little too squat for the figure to hold, and a later TOS movie communicator. Rather than being painted black or dark grey, however, the communicator seems to be translucent, which is a bit odd. That and the fact that I'm pretty sure they used their insignias as a comm badge in this episode, and they didn't have communicators or indeed tricorders shown on screen. Either way, there's not much to go on accessory-wise from the source material, so at least she comes with things. Articulation-wise, it's the same as Jellico, although the cut of the tunic slightly impedes the legs from spreading out. And because Garrett wears boots, the ankle articulation is higher up. I'm not sure if this is the issue when it comes to getting her to stand up. Her limbs seem a bit too nimble. At this point, she might have to be posed dead in the cabinet. Next, we have figure 003, Tuvix, from the Voyager episode with the same name. He comes even more securely packaged than the rest, with a textured uniform blending both the fashion choices of Neelix and Tuvok. I think the sculpt is bang on, and it also includes a slightly more distressed expression from the climax of the episode. I really like Tuvix's accessories, which include the offending orchid in its transporter containment vessel, a hexagonal storage case, a Voyager boomerang phaser and tricorder, as well as 8 swappable hands. Tuvix has all the same articulation as Jellico, with the tunic slightly impeding the waist and leg movements. Certainly a deep cut choice, but really nicely realized, and I particularly like the detailed swirls on his uniform. And oh my, figure 004 is Captain Hikaru Sulu himself, based on his appearance in the movie The Undiscovered Country. It certainly carries the likeness of George Takei, but my only gripe is that the colour of his neck seems to be a couple of shades lighter than the colour of his face, so it's a bit jarring. This figure includes a swappable chest piece so you can pose him slightly more casually, as well as being able to hold and sip his iconic cup and saucer from the opening of the movie, which can separate. This means he includes another 2 hands, making 10 in total, as well as accessories from both the earlier and later TOS movies, so you can pose him Wrath of Khan style as well. Articulation wise, it's the same as Garrett really, with the tunic slightly impeding the waist and legs, and with ankle articulation at the top of the boot. Over to figure 005, Valkris. Now, I've got to admit, I was kind of dreading this one because apart from the fact that the movie The Search for Spock doesn't exactly rate highly for me, this character is practically in one scene. So I was really having a hard time seeing what value this would add to my shelf. But boy, was I wrong. Because this might be my favorite figure in the wave. Because she comes absolutely packed with extras, hence the oversized box, while being priced exactly the same as the other figures. I like to think that Nacelle knew she would be a tough sell and did this on purpose. And it worked. Valkris, who looks like a combination between a drag queen and a B-movie space vixen, is really nicely detailed, with the braided hair, the intimidating jewelry, the textured armored dress, and the flowing cape. She comes complete with a black Klingon data chip that was so black I actually thought it was missing from the box when I first saw it, as well as a nicely detailed Klingon tricorder and batleth, which I'm not quite sure was even in the movie, but either way, it's a nice touch. The glaringly obvious additions are the Genesis Probe, which is very nicely laid and detailed. The various cutouts and shadings really sell it as something technically impressive. It also includes a housing which snaps shut, although the probe itself can still slip out of the bottom. Speaking of which, I'm not sure if the center part is supposed to come out or not, but either way, it looks cool. The Genesis control box is also included. It's nicely detailed and even has a little bit of motion built in. If you carefully turn the dial, the center part can retract down like in the movie. The only weird thing is that it looks like there are 3 screws missing from the back plate of the control box. I don't believe it's intentional, maybe another manufacturing miss, but it does provide a great place to store accessories. In terms of articulation, the head can do a 360 while the arms, biceps, elbows and wrists move, with another set of 8 hands all up. Because of the high boots, the knees swivel and bend this time, and despite the dress, the waist rotates easily. This is really the deepest of deep cuts, and it's turned into an excellent figure, and I'm sure will go really well paired with the forthcoming Dr. Marcus in Wave 2. Figure 006. Now, this one has been causing some contention online. Mirror Jonathan Archer. The head in the promotional pictures looks passable, but what's come out, not so much. But the interesting thing is, it doesn't look as bad in person. In fact, I think the issue is the purple blush underneath his eyes, which makes his cheeks look very puffy. And because of the soft, shiny sculpt, it accentuates his nose and his chin, and not in a good way. Like Sulu, he also suffers from the paint on his neck being several shades lighter than his face. Archer is presented in his TOS era wrap from the episode In a Mirror Darkly. I've got to admit, it's a pretty bland outfit unfortunately, and I kind of wish it was in his overalls with the Mako rifle and the knife, as that would have been a much more detailed and dynamic outfit. Included are the iconic green spirit bottle and glasses, as well as 2 champagne flutes. He was a real drinker in this episode apparently, one of which has liquid splashing out like in the penultimate scene in part 2. He also comes with an Enterprise phase pistol and communicator, as well as a TOS phaser as seen in the episode, and a TOS tricorder which was not in the episode. Finally, his Terran dagger is also included, as well as, yep, you guessed it, 8 swappable hands. Here he is next to Art Asylum's Broken Bow release of Archer. He stands about a head shorter, although his accessories are scaled almost exactly the same. It's a real shame these lines aren't compatible, and comparing this early 2000s sculpt, I think the Art Asylum figure is a better likeness with a more detailed paint application. I think this is probably the most disappointing figure of the wave for me. He's got accessories galore, but I think the paint application on the sculpt has really let him down, unfortunately. And if there was ever someone crying out to be a Playmates figure, it is number 007 Weyoun from Deep Space Nine. This character is gloriously realized, with a detailed, opposing print costume, which is crisp. The swappable face sculpts absolutely capture the duality of Jeffrey Combs. He also includes 8 swappable hands, which can carry everything from one of 3 vials of Nacelle White, its very large carry case, and I love this, a plate with a slice of pizza and a pair of chopsticks with a piece of pepperoni stuck on the end. From the episode Treachery, Faith, and the Great River. I mean, enough said. Weyoun also includes the virtual sensory display headset used in place of a view screen aboard Dominion warships, and it fits both heads. Weyoun's head rotates 360 degrees and is obviously swappable as well. There are ball jointed shoulders, bicep, elbow, and waist articulation. The tunic impedes the waist swivel, but the thighs, knees, and ankles all articulate, and he stands really well. Another absolute winner of a figure here. The final figure for Wave 1 is number 008 Peter Preston, Scotty's ill-fated nephew from the movie The Wrath of Khan. I think what's so great about this choice is that Preston is in an outfit that I don't believe has ever been replicated in action figure form, the white engineering jumpsuit. It's so detailed with all its ribs, buckles, and attachments. Even though it's molded in white plastic, all those details are really brought out. It's striking and stands out on a shelf. Like Rachel Garrett before him, Peter Preston also comes with a death head showing radiation burns. Now, I really like the head sculpts and the paint details, but I'm not 100% sold that this is the same skinny, awkward looking cadet from the movie. Dare I say, his face looks a little bit more filled out and conventionally attractive than his on-screen counterpart. Nevertheless, Preston only includes 6 swappable hands this time, maybe because the gloves are incredibly bulky. In addition to the familiar phaser and communicator, he comes with the heavy-duty tricorder, which again is really nicely detailed, and 2 engineering tools. Which, and I'm not sure if it's just the gloves, look really undersized in his hands and unfortunately aren't held very well. Finally, he comes with a respirator, which can slot into the port on his jumpsuit. This is made from a hard plastic, so there is really only one position it can sit without falling off his face or out of the port. Preston's head rotates 360 degrees and easily comes off, although it's a little bit harder to get back on. It seems like the ball joint is a bit too loose, so if you don't position it dead on, it doesn't snap into place. The shoulders articulate as does the biceps, even with the attachments to the suit. The elbows a little stiff and the wrists move. The waist does a 360 and the legs move out despite again the details on the suit. The thighs rotate, the knees bend, and the bottom of the boots articulate at the ankle. And that's Peter. So, what do I think? Well, I was a bit apprehensive about Nacelle's entry into Star Trek. As I've said, I've been a collector for a while and I've been through the rise and fall of many lines. I was gutted when Art Asylum's Enterprise line never rounded out the cast and completed the last bridge base. I was similarly disappointed when the sculpts in the Diamond Select TNG line seemed to go backwards in quality, and I'm sick and tired of having to buy the same Kirk, Spock, and Picard every time a new company thinks they're going to take a crack at Star Trek and it fails. But while it's a risky move, I think Nacelle's deep cuts have been the right way to go. These aren't the same characters already sitting on collector shelves. Yes, they retail in Australia at $59.99 a figure, but for the size and accessories compared to other lines, they seem to be the way to go. The action figure market for something like Star Trek especially has changed. So these are never going to appear in conventional retail, and they're going to be marketed at collectors. The choices for Wave 2 are interesting to me, especially Year of Hell Janeway and T'Pol, not to mention Generations Kirk with a flipping horse. With a full TOS line slated, alongside a highly ambitious Build-A-Bridge later, as well as a 4th wave planned with Captain Proton, I mean honestly, Nacelle have gotten me excited here. Yes, Wave 1 had a few QC issues, heavy paint applications, a few missing details, and my Garrett that won't stand up, but I actually really like the look of this line. Fresh choices, good articulation, lots of accessories, and lots of big accessories. In hand, Nacelle has sold me on the next generation of Star Trek action figures. If you've enjoyed this review, let us know in the comments below which Nacelle Star Trek figure you're most looking forward to being released. Thanks for watching, and until next time.